Today we are going to talk about the One Health challenge of chemical pollution and contamination, including antimicrobial or pesticide residues. In the private sector, industries, companies and businesses tend to dispose of their chemical waste improperly into the environment. This then leads to a huge problem for people, the environment and animals. The environment is greatly affected by this type of pollution. It creates habitat, or it causes habitat destruction, soil erosion, and land and water contamination. All of the animals living there are also in danger. Their homes are destroyed and their health is at risk because they have to drink and eat the contaminated food and water to survive. People who live near to the water are also affected by this. Some people drink the water and some also use it for daily activities like cleaning or cooking, which can also put all the people in danger. The animals also move closer to the people in search of clean water, which would also lead to animal-human conflict. The farmers using the water to grow crops for the animals are also at risk of big financial loss. The pollution causes big problems for them and puts them in an impossible situation. If there is antimicrobial or pesticide residues in this contamination, this creates an even bigger problem. This can lead to antimicrobial or pesticide resistance, making the medication of those specific things impossible. This example is only locally, but this problem is happening everywhere due to a lack of policies and regulations, making it a national and even global problem. Climate change is affecting all of us, not just the people living next to the chemical waste. A few people are affected by this situation. We have the homeowners and residents of the local area, the government and municipality, local industries in the private sector, medical and veterinary personnel nearby, the education system, local animals, NGOs and academics on the topic or researchers. Where have we gone wrong for all of this to happen? Well, firstly, we can say the private sector, the industries, business and companies are not following guidelines for their chemical waste. They have absolutely no regard for anything but themselves and are more money hungry and lazy than to care about the environment around them. Secondly, the government is not enforcing rules and regulations or don't have proper policies in place to control the situation. They are also not monitoring the situation, and they also don't put out finances to control situations like this. Researchers or academics on the topic are not educating people either on the risk and consequences, and they are also not identifying hazards earlier enough and not reporting this to the government and municipalities. The locals and residents are also not taking the problem seriously, and they just add to this pollution by throwing away trash on the floor rather than dustbins. Everything is just one big problem, and it's just contributing more and more to this chemical pollution. Where have we gone wrong for all of this to happen? Well, firstly, we can say the private sector, the industries, business and companies are not following guidelines for their chemical waste. They have absolutely no regard for anything but themselves and are more money hungry and lazy than to care about the environment around them. Secondly, the government is not enforcing rules and regulations or don't have proper policies in place to control the situation. They are also not monitoring the situation, and they also don't put out finances to control situations like this. Researchers or academics on the topic are not educating people either on the risk and consequences, and they are also not identifying hazards earlier enough and not reporting this to the government and municipalities. The locals and residents are also not taking the problem seriously, and they just add to this pollution by throwing away trash on the floor rather than dustbins. Everything is just one big problem, and it's just contributing more and more to this chemical pollution. There are a few ways that we can change this problem. Firstly, we have to start with communication. It's very important for the government or municipalities to communicate with the private sector about the policies, rules and regulations. They should also communicate any consequences that will follow if they don't follow these rules. Researchers and academics should also exchange knowledge and communicate with the government about the extent of the situation. They can also do this by testing the water and regularly giving the government data to work with as evidence. NGOs should also communicate the extent of the problem with the public and also communicate the financial needs to solve this problem. Locals or residents should communicate to the local municipality or academics if they see the problem or if it is affecting them so that we know where there are problem areas. Veterinary and medical specialists should communicate the impact of antimicrobial pesticide resistance to local people and farmers so that they know what the risks are and what they can do to combat that. Then, what the education system can also do is just to share knowledge and communicate the danger of the problem to raise awareness for chemical pollution so that we can end it and so that everyone can work together to stop it. Secondly, we need collaboration between different parties to help solve this problem. Not one person alone is going to be able to do it. The government and the private sector need to collaborate to make sure the rules and policies are in place and followed. Government and academics should collaborate to find out what the extent of the problem is. Academics and residents should collaborate to share knowledge and to raise awareness. NGOs and residents can collaborate to help solve the problem and help for extra hands. The education and NGO can also collaborate, as well as doctors and vets, to also just share knowledge and data for more proof of the problem and to just raise awareness. Thirdly, we need coordination. We need people in charge, otherwise nothing is going to happen. Governments and municipalities can take coordination regarding the rules, regulations and policies and make sure that the private sector follow them. Academics and researchers can coordinate local municipalities on the steps that should be taken to solve the problem. Doctors and vets or medical professionals can coordinate the residents on the steps that they should take to protect themselves and their animals and to also decrease their own pollution. And then the CEO of private sectors can coordinate his or her workers and managers to follow the policies set in place and to decrease and even stop chemical pollution. Then lastly, capacity building, or how we are going to make this plan work. We can educate and raise awareness about the problem using social media, news outlets and schools. The governments and municipalities can also ensure that correct policies are in place by doing frequent visits to the private sector to see that they're enforcing the rules. Private sector leaders should take responsibility and also check up on the people regularly to make sure that chemical pollution is cut out of their sector. NGOs and locals can raise funds by hosting events to try and help clean the water in the environment. And conservationists and environmentalists can check up on affected places regularly to see that the fauna and flora is protected and healthy. There's no one thing that we can do to help solve this problem, and not only one person. We need all hands on deck to solve chemical pollution and to stop antimicrobial and residue pollution as well. Everyone is involved in One Health, and everyone is affected by this One Health problem.